The rain hadn't stopped all evening, soft and steady against the glass of the penthouse window. Boston shimmered below, a city that never truly slept, its streets pulsing faintly in the midnight haze. Inside, Marcus Hale sat behind his desk, the glow of a laptop illuminating the sharp lines of a man too used to success and too unfamiliar with silence. He was reviewing contracts, distracted by nothing and no one, until his phone buzzed beside him. A new email. The subject line read, "My homework. Why my mom is my hero." He frowned. Another PR pitch, maybe a spam submission. But curiosity, that rare quiet instinct that had once made him a great innovator before he became a billionaire, nudged him to open it. And in the stillness of his glass and steel office, Marcus began to read words that didn't belong in a corporate inbox. "My name is Ethan. I'm 8 years old. My teacher said to write about my hero. I picked my mom." Marcus' brow furrowed. He scrolled down. The sentences were uneven, written like a child speaking directly to the page. "My mom works 2 jobs, one in the morning at the office and one at night on the computer. She makes pancakes shaped like hearts, even when she's tired. She says grown-ups don't get heroes, they just get bills. But I think she's wrong. My hero cries sometimes when she thinks I can't hear, but she still smiles for me. That's what heroes do." Marcus blinked, the words striking something raw. He scrolled further. "Mom says if anything bad ever happens and I can't wake her up, I should call Daddy. But I don't know Daddy's number. So I used her old phone and sent this to her boss's email instead, because he's always nice to her in meetings. His name is Mr. Hale. That's you, right? Please help us. Mom's breathing funny. She won't wake up." Marcus's chair scraped the floor as he stood, heart pounding. For a second, his rational mind tried to process. An accident? A prank? But there was nothing fake about the fear between those lines. He grabbed his keys and jacket. When his car slid out into the rain, Marcus didn't think of boardrooms or bottom lines. He thought of an 8-year-old boy who had reached out into the dark, hoping someone would answer. The apartment was on the south side of Dorchester, modest, quiet, forgotten by the kind of people who lived in his world. Marcus climbed the narrow stairs 2 at a time, his shoes splashing through puddles left by a leaking roof. The hallway smelled faintly of detergent and old carpet. Apartment 3B. He knocked softly. "Ethan? It's Mr. Hale. I got your message." A small voice answered from behind the door. "What's my name?" Marcus exhaled. "Ethan Taylor. Your mom's name is Olivia. You sent me your homework." There was a pause, then the rattle of a chain, and the door opened. Ethan was small, thin, his face pale and frightened. His blonde hair stuck up at odd angles, his pajamas rumpled. Behind him, on a worn-out couch, lay a woman, still, flushed, her breathing shallow. Marcus moved to her side instantly. He didn't know what he'd expected, but not this. Her skin was burning. Her lips were dry. Fever. Possibly dehydration. He touched her wrist, pulse faint but steady. "Ethan," he said quietly, "your mom's really sick. We need to get her to the hospital." His boy shook his head fiercely. "She said no hospitals. We can't pay. Last time she got sick, she cried for weeks." Marcus hesitated, staring at Olivia. Her face, even in fever, carried a quiet strength, the kind that came from years of holding things together alone. He made his decision in one heartbeat. He picked her up. "Grab your mom's purse, buddy. I'll take care of the rest." In the ER, things moved quickly. Money opened doors that bureaucracy usually closed. Within minutes, doctors were at Olivia's side, checking vitals, hooking IVs, giving oxygen. Marcus sat outside the room. Ethan curled up next to him, still clutching his teddy bear. He wasn't used to this, to waiting, to feeling something he couldn't fix with a contract or a wire transfer. But as he looked down at the small boy leaning against his arm, he realized he wasn't thinking like a CEO anymore. He was thinking like a man who had just been handed a reason to care. Hours later, a nurse came out. "She's stable. Severe pneumonia. You brought her just in time." Marcus nodded, swallowing a wave of relief. Ethan's small voice broke the silence. "Is my mom going to die?" "No," Marcus said firmly. "Your mom's too strong for that." When Olivia woke, sunlight filtered through the blinds. The hospital room was quiet except for the soft beep of monitors. The first thing she saw was her son, sleeping in a chair beside the bed. The second was a man, tall, sharp-featured, impeccably dressed, sitting near the window, his phone silent in his lap.
"Who are you?" she asked hoarsely. Marcus looked up, his voice gentle. "Marcus Hale, your boss. Your son sent me an email last night." Her eyes widened. "Oh my God, Ethan, he saved your life," Marcus said simply. "He did exactly what you taught him to do." Olivia's eyes welled up. "You paid for this, didn't you?" Marcus didn't answer directly. "You needed help." "I don't take charity," she said, her voice thin but firm. Marcus smiled slightly. "Then don't. Consider it a business investment in a very determined employee." Despite herself, Olivia let out a weak laugh. "You're impossible." "I've been told that," he said softly. For the next few days, Marcus visited more often than he meant to. He brought books for Ethan, flowers for Olivia, and a quiet presence that the small hospital room somehow began to expect. Ethan adored him. Olivia tolerated him, or tried to. But the truth is, every time he walked through the door, the air changed. She'd built her life on independence, on pride, on surviving alone. Yet this man, with his calm voice and unshakable patience, unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. One afternoon, when Ethan was in the playroom, she finally asked him, "Why are you doing this, Mr. Hale? People like you don't just show up in people's lives." Marcus studied her face, then said quietly, "Maybe I was waiting for a reason to." Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither looked away. When Olivia was discharged, Marcus insisted on driving them home. The apartment looked smaller now, dim under the same flickering bulb. He noticed the small details he'd missed that first night: the chipped mug by the sink, the pile of unpaid bills half hidden under a cookbook, the blanket draped neatly on the couch where he'd found her unconscious. "You really don't have to do this," she said as he unpacked groceries onto the counter. "I know," he said simply. "That's why I'm doing it." He visited often after that, sometimes bringing dinner, sometimes just conversation. Olivia told herself it was gratitude, nothing more. But as days turned into weeks, she found herself looking forward to his visits, to the sound of his laugh echoing softly in her small kitchen, to the way he talked to Ethan like the boy was the most important person in the room. And for Marcus, it was something different, something he couldn't name. In a world full of contracts and expectations, Olivia's quiet strength was disarming. She didn't flatter him. She didn't fear him. She treated him like a man, not a brand. And slowly that became addictive. One night, he found her sitting by the window, a blanket around her shoulders, the rain tracing soft trails down the glass. "Ethan asleep?" he asked. She nodded. "He said he wants to be a superhero when he grows up." Marcus smiled faintly. "Sounds about right. He already saved someone once." Olivia looked at him for a long time. "You don't have to keep doing this, Marcus. We'll be fine." He met her gaze. "Maybe I'm not doing this for you." Her lips parted slightly as if to ask what he meant, but he was already standing to leave. When the door closed behind her, she whispered to the empty room, "Then who, Marcus?"
The next morning dawned gray and gentle, the kind of light that blurred the city's edges. Marcus sat in his office, staring at the skyline, and realizing that for the first time in years, the view did nothing for him. The morning briefings, the endless calls, the market updates, all of it felt strangely hollow. He reached for his phone, thumb hovering above a name he'd never thought he'd save in his contacts: Olivia Taylor. He typed a short message. "How are you feeling today?" He didn't expect to reply right away. She wasn't the type to sit on her phone all morning. But just as he began to set it down, it buzzed with a single word: better. No emoji, no follow-up, just better. It made him smile more than any quarterly profit report ever had. Over the next few weeks, Marcus found excuses to check in. Sometimes he dropped off groceries, claiming it was for Ethan. Sometimes he pretended it was work-related. Olivia saw through every one of his excuses, but never called him out. He learned she loved strong coffee, but always watered it down so it would last longer. She learned that he preferred silence over small talk. But when he did speak, his words carried weight. Ethan, ever the bridge between them, adored Marcus. He'd run to the door whenever he heard his knock, chattering about school projects, his friends, the latest cartoon he was obsessed with. Marcus listened to every word as if it were gospel. One evening, while Ethan showed him a drawing of a rocket ship, Olivia leaned against the kitchen counter and watched the two of them. For the first time in years, she felt what quiet safety sounded like. Laughter that wasn't forced, warmth that wasn't fleeting. But then reality whispered in your ear, "He's a billionaire, Olivia. He doesn't belong here."
That night, after Marcus left, she sat on the couch surrounded by bills. The numbers blurred, the exhaustion returned. She didn't need a man sweeping in like a savior. She'd built her life on surviving without one. And yet, as the rain started again outside, she caught herself listening for the hum of his car fading down the street. 2 days later, Marcus called and asked if she'd like to have lunch. Nothing fancy, he'd said, which of course meant a quiet restaurant overlooking the harbor. Olivia hesitated. She didn't own clothes for places like that. But Ethan begged her to go, promising he'd behave with his babysitter. So she said yes. When she arrived, she almost turned back. The hostess recognized Marcus immediately and led her through a line of immaculate tables. Every head turned, curious who the CEO was meeting. But Marcus stood when he saw her, his smile disarming in its simplicity. "You look perfect," he said. And for once, she believed someone meant it. They talked for hours about everything and nothing. About how she'd once dreamed of being a teacher. About how he'd stopped painting when his father died. About how loneliness looked different when you were rich, but it still hurt the same way. At one point, she caught herself laughing so hard she forgot the other diners even existed. When the check came, she reached for her purse. He raised an eyebrow. "Don't. I'm not your charity case." He smiled. "Then consider it my fine for interrupting your day." That earned a reluctant smile from her. "You really don't take no for an answer, do you?" "Not when I hear maybe hiding behind it," he replied. After that, lunches turned into dinners, and dinners into evenings spent in her small apartment, the three of them sharing stories and late-night pancakes. Marcus found himself doing things he hadn't done in decades, reading bedtime stories, fixing a broken cabinet door, carrying groceries up 2 flights of stairs, things that felt human. One night, Olivia asked him quietly, "Don't people like you have better things to do?" He looked at her for a long moment before answering, "Maybe not anymore." The first time he stayed past midnight, Olivia woke to find him asleep on the couch, Ethan curled beside him. The sight did something to her heart she couldn't explain. She covered them both with a blanket and stood there for a long time, watching the man who'd once been just a name on her paycheck, breathing softly beside her child. In the quiet of that moment, she admitted something to herself. She was falling for him. Not for the billionaire, not for the rescuer, but for the man who listened, who showed up, who laughed with her son as if it were the easiest thing in the world. But life, she knew, never let good things bloom without testing them. A week later, Marcus invited her to a charity gala. "Don't have to stay long," he promised. "Just keep me company for an hour." She wanted to say no. She hated crowds, and she knew how people in his world looked at women like her, too plain, too ordinary, too working class. But he'd helped her through so much, and part of her wanted to see what his world looked like. So she went. When the room glittered, chandeliers, champagne, the hum of whispered ambition. She'd borrowed a dress for her neighbor and done her own hair, but the moment they walked in, she felt every pair of eyes turn. Whispers followed. "That's Hallow's date? She looks like the help." Marcus noticed. His jaw tightened. He wrapped his arm protectively around his waist, leaning close to whisper, "Ignore them." She tried for an hour. She smiled, she nodded politely, she even danced once when he asked. But the longer the night went on, the more out of place she felt. At one point, a woman approached, sleek, sharp, familiar with privilege. "Marcus, darling," she said, kissing the air beside his cheek. "You didn't tell us you were mentoring the staff." Olivia froze. Marcus's turn was calm, but his eyes were cold. "She's not staff, Victoria. She's my guest." "Oh, of course," the woman said smoothly, but the smirk that followed cut deep. Olivia excused herself a few minutes later, muttering something about fresh air. She found a balcony and gripped the railing, the city glittering far below. Marcus joined her soon after. "Don't let them get to you." "It's not them," she said quietly. "It's me. I don't belong here." He turned toward her. "Maybe you belong exactly where you are." She shook her head. "You don't understand, Marcus. People like me, we don't fit into stories like yours. We're the ones who serve the drinks, not the ones who dance under chandeliers." He stepped closer. "Then maybe I'm tired of chandeliers." Her eyes lifted to his, a breath caught between them. For a second she thought he might kiss her. For a second she wanted him to, but she turned away first. "Take me home," she whispered. The car ride was silent. Rain streaked across the windows, city lights blurring in the glass. When they reached her building, she unbuckled quickly. "Thank you for tonight," she said softly. "Olivia?" "Good night, Marcus." And she was gone before he could answer. Marcus sat in the car for a long time, watching the rain run down the windshield. For a man who'd built empires, who'd closed impossible deals, he never felt so powerless. He had no idea that upstairs, behind the thin apartment walls, Olivia sat on her bed holding Ethan's favorite teddy bear, fighting back tears she refused to let fall. Because for all his kindness, all his warmth, she couldn't shake the voice in her head that whispered, "You and him? That's not how the world works."
The next few days passed in silence. Marcus tried to focus on work, but Olivia lingered in every pause between meetings, in the echo of the rain against the glass. Her laughter had taken up space in his life without permission, and now the absence of it felt unbearable. He sent a message once. "I hope you're okay." No reply. At night, he scrolled through their old texts, stopping on the one word she'd sent weeks ago. Better. It stung now because she wasn't, and neither was he. Olivia threw herself into routine. Morning shifts at the office, evening remote calls, lunches packed for Ethan. Life returned to its gray rhythm, the kind that left no room for hope, only survival. But hope, once invited in, doesn't leave quietly. Every time her phone buzzed, she looked, half expecting his name. Every time Ethan mentioned her, her chest tightened. "Is Mr. Hale coming back?" Ethan asked one night at dinner. She hesitated. "He's busy, sweetheart. People like him, they have a lot to do." Ethan frowned. "But he said we're friends." She smiled weakly. Sometimes, adults forget what that means. The lie tasted bitter. 3 weeks after the gala, Marcus's driver pulled into the familiar neighborhood again. He told himself it was business. He needed her to sign updated remote work documents, but even his assistant hadn't believed the excuse. When Olivia opened the door, she looked surprised. Not angry, not relieved, just tired. "I wasn't expecting you." "I know." She stepped aside anyway. The apartment was the same. Small, warm, lived in. Ethan was coloring on the floor, and when he saw Marcus, his whole face lit up. "You came back." Marcus smiled and knelt to meet him. "Of course I did." Ethan hugged him tightly, then darted off to show a new drawing. Marcus glanced at Olivia, whose arms were crossed even as her expression softened. "You didn't have to come. I wanted to." A beat of silence. Then she sighed. "Coffee?" He nodded. "Please." They sat across from each other at the small kitchen table. The air between them was heavy with unspoken things. "I shouldn't have taken you there," he said quietly. "It wasn't your fault." Still. "Marcus," she met his eyes. "You can't protect me from who I am." He exhaled. "I wasn't trying to protect you. I just wanted you to see that I don't care what they think." "And I do," she said softly. "Because I have to live in that world, even if just for one night. You get to leave it. I don't." Her words landed like stones. He wanted to argue, to promise he'd make her belong, but that was exactly the arrogance she feared. Before he could answer, a sharp knock rattled the door. Olivia frowned. "Who?" When she opened it, the color drained from her face. A man stood there, disheveled, the kind of exhaustion that comes from bad habits etched into his features. "Scott," she whispered. Marcus stiffened behind her. He recognized the name instantly. Ethan's father. Scott gave a half smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Liv, been a while." Ethan appeared from behind the couch. "Dad?" The word cut through the room like a blade. Olivia moved instinctively, placing a hand on her son's shoulder. "Ethan, go to your room." "But now." When he was gone, she turned back, her voice trembling with controlled anger. "What are you doing here?" "I came to see my son," Scott said smoothly, though his gaze flicked toward Marcus. "And to meet the man who's been playing house while I've been busy." Marcus's tone was ice. "Watch your mouth." Scott laughed. "There it is, the billionaire protector. Tell me, Hale, how much have you spent to buy yourself a family this time?" "Get out," Olivia snapped. But Scott wasn't finished. "You think money makes you a father? She wouldn't even let me visit until she found a rich replacement." "That's not true," she hissed. "You left. You disappeared for 2 years." "Had my reasons," he muttered. Then, quieter. "But I'm back now, and I need help." There it was, the real reason. He reached into his pocket and slid a folded piece of paper across the counter. 100 grand. That's what I owe. I'll pay you back. Olivia stared at it, horrified. You can't be serious. I'm desperate, Liv. They'll come after me. After us. There is no us, she said sharply. Scott's gaze hardened. Then maybe your new boyfriend can pay instead. Marcus rose slowly, his voice steady but lethal. Get out. Now, before I make sure you can't come back. Scott's smirk faltered. This isn't over. When the door slammed behind him, the apartment felt smaller, suffocating. Marcus turned to Olivia. You should have told me. About what? My ex-husband? My mistakes? My past? Her voice cracked. I didn't think you needed to add them to your collection of problems to fix. That's not fair. No, she whispered, but it's true. They didn't speak again for 2 days. Then Marcus got a call from his security chief. Scott had been trying to sell information to a tabloid. Photos of Marcus visiting Olivia's apartment, fake claims about secret affairs, and private details from her HR file. Marcus ended the call and stared out at the city, anger simmering beneath his calm. He could end Scott's little game in an hour. But how to do it without breaking Olivia's trust? He decided to go himself. When he arrived, Olivia was in the kitchen folding laundry. She looked up, startled. What are you doing here? I need to talk to you. Her shoulders tensed. If it's about Scott, it is, he said. He's been contacting the press. I've already stopped him. Her eyes widened. What? I had to. He was trying to drag your name through the mud. You had no right, she shouted. That's my life, Marcus. My son's life. I was protecting you. I don't need your protection, she said, voice trembling. You can't fix every part of me that scares you. He froze. That's not what this is, isn't it? You walk in here like some savior and suddenly every decision belongs to you. I can't breathe under it. Olivia, she think you should go. He took a step forward. Please, don't do this. But she shook her head. You don't belong in this world, Marcus, and I don't belong in yours. The words cut deeper than she knew. He nodded, once, slowly. If that's what you want. When the door closed behind him, Olivia pressed her hands to her face and broke. That night, Ethan found her crying on the couch. Mom, did Mr. Hale make you sad? She wiped her eyes quickly. No, baby, just tired. Ethan crawled into her lap, resting his head against her shoulder. He said heroes help people. Maybe you helped him too. She held him close, silent tears slipping down her cheeks. Maybe, sweetheart, maybe. 2 weeks passed. Marcus threw himself into work again, but nothing fit. Meetings blurred, deals closed, numbers rose, and none of it meant anything. Every night, he almost called her, and every night he stopped himself. Until one evening, his phone rang first. It was the hospital. A nurse's voice, urgent. Mr. Hale, we have a patient here listed under your company's employee plan, Olivia Taylor. She was brought in after a car accident. The world tilted. He didn't remember the drive. He barely remembered the rain pounding the windshield, the blur of traffic lights. He only remembered the sight of her through the glass window of the emergency ward, still, pale, fragile in a way that she'd never seen before. A doctor met him at the door. She's stable, but it was close. She swerved to avoid another car. Concussion, some broken ribs. She'll recover, but she needs rest. Marcus exhaled shakily. Can I see her? The doctor nodded. Inside, Olivia lay unconscious, an IV running from her arm. Ethan slept curled in a chair beside her, clutching his teddy bear. Marcus sank to his knees beside the bed and whispered, You don't get to leave this way, Olivia. Not without letting me say I'm sorry. He stayed there until morning. When her eyes finally opened, the first thing she saw was him, unshaven, exhausted, and more human than she'd ever seen before. Marcus? She whispered. He reached for her hand, hesitated, then took it gently. I'm here. She blinked back tears. I didn't mean what I said. He smiled weakly. You meant every word. You just didn't mean it to hurt. A tear rolled down her cheek. I'm sorry. So am I. They sat in silence, her hand resting in his, the sound of heart monitors steady and calm. For the first time since the wrong email that started it all, Marcus realized something simple and devastating. He didn't just care about Olivia and Ethan. He needed them. And as the sun rose over the hospital window, painting gold across her face, he made a promise to fight for her, not as a man who could fix things, but as a man who could finally learn to stay.
The days after the accident blurred into soft white walls and quiet mornings. Olivia recovered slowly, surrounded by flowers and the low hum of machines. Ethan spent most nights curled beside her, his drawings of rockets and superheroes taped to the wall above the bed. Marcus was there every day, sometimes silent, sometimes bringing breakfast or paperwork for her to sign, pretending it was business when everyone knew it wasn't. The first few days, she barely spoke. Pride still sat between them like a shadow, but pride fades when gratitude grows stronger. And when she finally looked at him, really looked at him, she saw not a billionaire, but a man who hadn't left. "You're still here," she whispered one morning as he handed her coffee. He smiled faintly. "I said I'd stay." "You didn't have to." "I know, but I wanted to." For once, she didn't argue. By the time she was discharged, Boston's spring rain had softened to mist. Marcus insisted she stay at his place until she healed, but she refused. "My home, my rules," she said firmly. So he compromised. He arranged for a private nurse, restocked her pantry, and made sure Ethan's school rides were covered. He didn't ask permission. He just did it quietly, in ways that didn't bruise her independence. One evening, as she sat on the couch with her arms still bandaged, she noticed new curtains, fresh paint on the wall, and a working heater that hadn't worked in months. "You've been busy," she said when he walked in. He shrugged. "Consider it a home improvement project." "Marcus," she began, then stopped. Gratitude tangled with something deeper, something she was scared to name. He crossed the room, standing close enough for her to feel his warmth. "Say it," he murmured. She looked up. "Why are you really doing this?" His answer came softly. "Because I can't imagine not doing it." Ethan barreled in at that moment, breaking the spell. "Mom, look! Mr. Hale helped me build a model rocket." Olivia laughed through the tears she hadn't realized were gathering. "Of course he did." The days that followed were simple. Shared dinners, laughter, quiet nights filled with stories instead of worries. Marcus started leaving work earlier, ignoring calls that once ruled his life. His assistant joked he was becoming human again. Maybe he was. But peace never lasts untested. One morning, Olivia's doorbell rang. When she opened it, a courier handed her an envelope. Inside was a letter from Scott's lawyer, petition for joint custody. Her hands trembled. It was cruelly timed, just as she'd started to believe in stability again. She called Marcus immediately. He arrived within half an hour. "I'll take care of it." "No," she said quickly. "I'll handle this." "He's trying to use Ethan to get at you, Olivia. You know that." "Maybe, but Ethan's my son. I won't let this become your battle." Marcus looked at her for a long moment, frustration and admiration mixing in his eyes. "You really don't make it easy, do you?" "I've never been easy," she said quietly. He stepped closer. "That's what I love about you." The words slipped out before he could stop them. The air froze. Olivia blinked, her heart suddenly pounding. "What did you just say?" He exhaled slowly. "You heard me?" Her lips parted, but no words came. "I know it's not simple. You don't trust easily. I don't open up easily. But when I almost lost you, it scared the hell out of me. I don't want to go back to the life I had before you and Ethan." She shook her head, tears welling. "Marcus, this isn't some fairy tale. I'm a single mom with medical bills and a messy past. You're a man who finally found something real." She turned away, gripping the edge of the counter. "If you say things like that, I won't know how to leave." "Then don't." Silence. The kind that says everything. When she finally faced him again, her eyes shimmered with something fragile and honest. "You don't even realize what you're asking." "I'm asking for a chance." She wanted to resist. Pride told her she should, but her heart had already decided. That night, after Ethan fell asleep clutching his new necklace, Marcus found him on the balcony beside her. The city lights shimmered, and the air smelled of rain and coffee. "I used to think strength meant doing everything alone," she said. "And now?"
Maybe it's letting someone stay. Then let me. And for the first time, she didn't pull away. Weeks passed. Scott's custody petition fell apart quickly. Marcus's legal team made sure of that. But he didn't gloat. He kept his promise to let Olivia lead the fight. When it was over, she found him waiting outside the courthouse, hands in his pockets, wearing that infuriatingly calm expression. "It's done," she said, almost in disbelief. "I know." He nodded. "You didn't interfere?" "Not once. Though it nearly killed me." Olivia laughed, a real, unguarded laugh, and before she could stop herself, she leaned forward and kissed him. It wasn't planned, it wasn't cautious, it was the kind of kiss that happens when two people finally stop pretending they're already in love. When they parted, breathless, she whispered, "That was reckless." He said, "Worth it." Summer melted into autumn. The city changed colors, so did their lives. Marcus spent weekends with them, baking, reading, learning how to burn pancakes as badly as Olivia did. Ethan started calling him Hale instead of Mr. Hale, and sometimes Marcus. Once, half asleep, he even said Dad, and no one corrected him. Olivia found herself smiling more, worrying less. She'd always thought love meant losing control, but this felt like finding balance again. One crisp October morning, Marcus appeared at her door holding a small velvet box. Olivia blinked. "What's that?" He hesitated. "Before you panic, it's not what you think." She raised an eyebrow. "Then what is it?" He opened it to reveal not a ring, but a delicate gold chain with a tiny silver star. "For Ethan. He told me he wished he could reach the stars, so I figured we'd give him a star." Her eyes softened. "You didn't have to." "I know, but I wanted to." She smiled through her tears. "You're really impossible." "Maybe, but you love impossible things." And she realized who was right. That night, after Ethan fell asleep clutching his new necklace, Marcus found him on the balcony again, watching the rain. "Do you ever think about how it started?" she asked quietly. He nodded. "A wrong email." "A mistake," she said. He turned to her. "The best one I've ever received." They stood in silence for a moment, the city lights flickering below, the rain whispering around them. Then Olivia leaned her head against his shoulder. "I used to think strength meant doing everything alone," she said. "And now?" "Now I think maybe it's letting someone stay." "Then let me." And months later, at Ethan's school talent show, Marcus sat in the front row beside Olivia, clapping as Ethan stood on stage holding a microphone too big for his hands. "My project is called The Night My Mom's Hero Came to Help," Ethan said proudly. "It's about the day I sent my homework to the wrong person and met the right one instead." The audience laughed softly. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. Marcus reached over and squeezed her hand. Ethan continued, "Heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear suits and make pancakes that taste funny. But heroes are people who stay." The applause was thunderous. Marcus looked at Olivia, who was already looking at him. And in that moment, the world felt perfectly still. Later that evening, as the rain returned outside, Marcus tucked Ethan into bed. The boy looked up sleepily. "Are you staying tonight?" he asked. "If your mom lets me." From the doorway, Olivia's voice was soft. "He's already staying." And as Marcus turned to her, her expression said everything. No fear, no hesitation, but quiet certainty. He crossed the room and kissed her forehead. "I love you," he whispered. "I know," she said with a smile. "You always answer when I call." Outside, thunder rolled far away, and the rain kept falling. Gentle, steady, endless. The kind of rain that never really stops, only softens. The kind that starts with a wrong message and ends with finding home.
A year had passed since that night of rain and wrong numbers. A year since Marcus Hale's life had split in two, before Olivia and after her. The world still called him a billionaire, a CEO, a man who built empires. But those titles didn't mean much anymore. Because now when people asked what mattered most to him, he'd smile and say, "Breakfast time, when the pancakes never turn out right." It was a Sunday morning. The kitchen smelled of syrup and coffee. Ethan was at the table, tongue sticking out in concentration as he painted the last details of a school project. Olivia moved around the kitchen with quiet ease, her hair tied up, humming softly. Marcus leaned against the counter, watching them both with a kind of peace he never thought he'd feel again. "Don't stare," Olivia teased without turning around. "Can't help it. I'm looking at my entire world." She rolled her eyes. "That's cheesy." "Maybe," he said, walking up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "But it's true." Ethan looked up. "Gross. Can you do that after breakfast?" Marcus laughed. "Deal, kiddo." It was domestic, ordinary, perfectly imperfect. And for a man who once measured success in numbers and headlines, this was the only equation that mattered. After breakfast, Olivia slipped on a light sweater and said she needed to pick something up in town. Marcus offered to drive her, but she smiled and shook her head. "You'll see soon enough," she said mysteriously. When she returned hours later, Ethan was bouncing with excitement, and Marcus was pretending not to ask. Finally, she handed him a small envelope. "Read it." He frowned but obeyed. Inside was a folded sheet of paper, handwritten in neat script. "Certificate of Adoption Petition. Ethan Taylor Hale." He froze. His throat tightened as he looked up at her. "I talked to Ethan. We both agreed it's time. You've been more than his friend, more than mine. You're family, Marcus, and you always will be." He blinked rapidly, his composure cracking in a way that no business negotiation ever could. "Are you sure?" She smiled, tears in her eyes. "You earned it." He pulled her close, unable to speak. For the first time in years, Marcus Hale, the man who had everything, felt like he truly belonged somewhere. A few months later, under a pale spring sky, they stood on the steps of the courthouse. The judge smiled down at the trio. "Congratulations, Mr. Hale. It's official." Ethan grinned from ear to ear, clutching the document like treasure. "Can we get ice cream now?" Marcus laughed, his voice thick. "As much as you want." When they stepped outside, Olivia laced her fingers through his. "You did it." He shook his head. "We did it." The sun broke through the clouds, catching in her hair, and for a brief moment Marcus thought about that night again. The email, the fear, the sound of a child's voice asking for help. He'd answered a wrong message, and somehow it had led him here. Later that evening, they drove to Cape Cod, where Marcus had quietly bought a small beach house. Not one of the sleek glass ones the wealthy favored, but a simple home with white walls and the smell of sea salt in the air. When she saw it, she stopped at the door, stunned. "You did not." He smiled sheepishly. "Before you scold me, it's not a gift. It's a place, for us. Somewhere that doesn't belong to either world, just ours." Her eyes softened. "You really thought of everything, didn't you?" "Not everything, but I'm learning." Ethan ran past them onto the sand, his laughter ringing across the beach. Olivia followed him, slipping off her shoes, the waves licking at her feet. Marcus watched them from the porch for a moment before joining them. They built a sandcastle together, Ethan digging furiously, Olivia sculpting towers, Marcus shaping walls that immediately collapsed. When they finally sat back to admire their crooked masterpiece, Olivia leaned her head against his shoulder. "You know, I used to hate the rain. It always meant something bad was coming. Bills, illness, worry. And now? Now I love it, because that's when you always showed up." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I don't want you to always wait for storms to see me, Olivia." She smiled. "I don't think I will, but it's nice to know that if they come, I won't face them alone." The waves crashed gently, the firelight dancing across their faces. For a long while, neither spoke. There was nothing left to say. Only peace. Years later, Ethan would tell the story differently. He'd say that once upon a time, his mom sent the wrong email, and instead of an error message, she found forever. He'd tell people that heroes don't always arrive with capes or grand gestures, that sometimes they show up tired, unsure, and late at night, but they stay. And in the end, that's what mattered most. One afternoon, long after the beach house became home, Marcus found Olivia sitting by the window watching the rain fall just as it had that first night. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked. She smiled without looking away. "Just thinking how it all began. One wrong email." I kissed her forehead, and every right moment since. She turned to him, eyes bright. You ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't opened it? He chuckled. I'd still be rich, still successful, still miserable. She laughed softly. Well, here's to mistakes then. To mistakes, he agreed, pulling her close. Outside, the rain fell steady and slow, tracing silver trails down the glass. Inside, warmth wrapped around them, the kind that only comes when two people stop running from their broken pieces and build something whole together. And somewhere in the quiet rhythm of the rain, a child's voice seemed to echo from the past, soft and certain. Please help us. Marcus smiled faintly, whispering to the memory, I did, kid, and you helped me too. The fire crackled, the ocean whispered, and as the night deepened, Olivia's voice came softly through the dark. Stay. Marcus tightened his arms around her, his answer the same as it had been from the beginning. Always.
If this story touched your heart, don't forget to give it a like. Your one click helps these stories reach someone who might need them tonight. Subscribe to Between Raindrops Stories for more tales of unexpected love, second chances, and the kind of moments that change everything. Because sometimes, all it takes is one message, one mistake, and one person who decides to stay. We'll meet again, somewhere between the raindrops.